My opinion is that limitation leads to innovation. So by limiting myself and limiting what it is that I want to do at any given time, I'm actually helping myself to be a better performer and to have a more solid setup and to be able to put forward a much better and a much more enjoyable performance for not only myself, but for normally the people that are watching as well. Limitation does not necessarily mean that you can't have everything in your setup or in your performance that you want to have in there, but it means that you should not only think about what you want to do, but what you don't want to do at any given time. I'm going to hide myself again. Here's a couple of things to think about. Basically, they're just kind of the same things that we're talking about, just said in a few different ways. I think one of the things that is important to realize, an important thing to realize, is that once again, we need to kind of take steps backwards. I really enjoy like working with people that are just getting started building their performance setups and then working with like kind of like big name artists because they kind of have a very similar mentality about wanting everything, and kind of my job then is to just manage people's expectations and say, okay, well, if you have this, then you're probably not going to be able to do this. And it's really interesting, but like especially on the bigger celebrity level, stability is a huge factor. Just making sure that their computers don't crash during a show, and the sacrifices that they're willing to make, like, okay, well, no third-party instruments, no Macs for Live devices, no this, no that. I need a redundant computer, just so that the show goes off without a hitch. And that happens to be like super high on their list of priorities, which is less high on my list of priorities because I think it's just part of modern performance now that we're working with technology and technology crashes. I just saw a really good friend of mine play at Berkine last week. The monitoring was so loud and the bass was so rumbly that it just shook his computer to bits and basically stopped his performance mid-set just because the bass was shaking his hard drive and it just started skipping. He stopped, he rebooted, and the show went on. But that's just what's to be expected now. One of my mentors and someone I have a large amount of respect for, Robert Henkaa, he is one of the founders of Ableton, and he's also doing amazing things. He's building these crazy laser shows, and amongst other things that he's doing, installations. And here's a quote from him. I got to listen to him speak at the Loop Summit last year, and he's always got just a lot of words of wisdom in terms of just his own workflow. So if you ever get a chance to check out some of his discussions, please do, because he says awesome things like limitations are really powerful, and I agree with him. Another thing that I really suggest considering is just what is your audience and who is your audience and how should you speak to them. So if I am, for example, in a court of law, how do I speak to the jurors versus hanging out with a group of my peers? How do I speak to a really technologically savvy group of people versus people who don't have much knowledge about audio technology? And, once again, asking that question, like, does your audience even matter? Come from, you know, a school of electroacoustic music as well, where there are just performers that are completely out of the picture that sit off to the side of the stage and just hit the space bar, and that's their performance, and that's completely fine with them. And I have respect for that as well because that is another part of performing. But knowing who you're addressing and how you're addressing them is a very important thing. Okay, so we've talked about the brainstorming. We've talked about things to think of that are super important in my opinion. Once again, break out with the pencil and paper. And once you come up with your answers, then stick to those and start building according to those specs. And if you start to get, distracted by other things, then just go back to that sheet and say, no, 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 this is what I said that I wanted to do. And then plug into that. If you come across something that is new to that list that you find important, then that's great. Add it to the list. But once again, prioritize it and weigh it in terms of the other things that you have on the list. Because you can't have everything on the list. That's just something that probably is going to be limited either by what you can physically do or by the technology that you're using. Just give a shout out, like real quick, a couple of people, like how's the speed at which I'm going at? Is this okay for y'all? Cool. Awesome. I'm getting some positive responses. Nice. Super duper.